Who really cares if Israel rejects the idea of the Palestinian people having their own sovereignty? The fact that the Israeli government rejects Palestinians having their own sovereignty is because they want to continue to be able to oppress the Palestinian people, claim that because they don't have a state, they have no rights, or whatever BS people want to use as an excuse to oppress Palestinian people. Uh, since they want their own state, they should automatically be able to establish their own state. It shouldn't take a consensus majority of the world to for people to be able to create their own state and have their rights recognized as being human rights.
To the situation is a two-state solution over time.
The two-state solution, a vision for Israel, the occupied West Bank, and Gaza. Essentially, it lays out two states, one for Israelis, one for Palestinians, side by side with separate governments. But it's hard to overstate how tough it is to actually agree on borders, divvying up a land important to both peoples. Leaders have called for a two-state solution for decades, even before Israel's establishment. Back in 1947, the UN put out a partition plan for separate Arab and Jewish states, with Jews getting a majority of the land despite having a smaller population. Jewish leaders accepted it. Arab leaders rejected it. Israel declared its
Well, yeah, people in the Palestinian area rejected it because they didn't want to give up the land that they grew up on, the house that they lived in, and be forced to live somewhere else.
independence in 1948, and right away its Arab neighbors invaded. After the war, the armistice lines looked like this. Then in 1967, Israel captured all this land during the Six-Day War, later agreeing to give the Sinai Peninsula back to Egypt. Over the years, leaders drew up many different peace plans. In 1993, Israeli and Palestinian leaders agreed to the Oslo Accords, a massive step toward peace. As part of it, the Palestine Liberation Organization recognized Israel's right to exist. Many Israelis and Palestinians were furious, and the Israeli prime minister was assassinated by a right-wing Jewish extremist, putting big peace talks like this on hold
Wait,
until 2000.
let's
By
go back.
Israelis and Palestine Liberation Organization recognized Israel's right to exist. Many Israelis and Palestinians were furious, and the Israeli prime minister was assassinated by a right-wing Jewish extremist.
Wow, a right-wing extremist Israeli killed the Israeli PM. That's not something I knew about. So that just goes to show how uh, crazy you become when you're a right winger. You will murder people that you don't agree with.
Putting big peace talks like this on hold until 2000, when Bill Clinton brought Israeli and Palestinian leaders together at Camp David. But they couldn't come to a deal, and now, years later, some don't believe in the two-state solution anymore. One reason, Israeli settlements, communities of Jews that have made their homes in the occupied West Bank, violating international and in some cases even Israeli law.
Yeah, the settlements violate international law. They may violate Israeli law, but the Israeli government obviously doesn't care, as the defense minister in Israel is arming and funding Israeli settlers so that they go into the West Bank and kill people. And the IDF protects the Israeli settlers, killing Palestinians, and the IDF will kill Palestinians as well.
Recent report from a pro-settler group found more than 500,000 Israeli settlers live in the West Bank, and that number is going up, raising huge questions.
500,000 Israeli settlers illegally occupy the West Bank. They don't live there. They're trying to colonize the place. Um, this just goes to show that the Israeli government does not care about international law.
About how a Palestinian state could be carved out without expelling huge numbers of Jews. Plus, many Palestinians who fled their homes in what's now Israel want to go back, along with their descendants. There are now millions of them, and if they returned, Israel might no longer be a Jewish majority. Israel's leaders say that's a non.
And that's something that the Israeli government is afraid of. They love having an ethno state. So if they allowed Palestinians to regain the land that was taken from them, yeah, the Israeli nation wouldn't be majority uh, Jewish anymore. So that's one thing Bibi Netanyahu and others in the Israeli government wants to prevent.
Non-starter. Then there's the question of who gets Jerusalem, a holy city for Jews, Muslims, and Christians. Palestinians claim East Jerusalem for the capital of their future state, but Israel says it must remain eternally undivided. It all complicates where exactly the borders of two states would go. An alternative, the
Yeah, they could make like Jerusalem a neutral area where anybody can freely enter and exit as they wish. Um, whereas, a place where everybody can enjoy. And I mean, that wouldn't be too hard. There's tons of Jewish people, Palestinian people, and others that, get along in the Middle East. So having a like neutral city would be pretty good.
one-state solution, one state covering Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza. That has its own challenges.
It's hard to see right now, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, that's what the Israeli government wants, a one single state where they can make it completely ethnically Jewish and every single Palestinian that they want, or make them second-class citizen, or just deny them any rights whatsoever, like they do the Israeli Bedouins that live in Israel. They don't even have the right to build permanent housing in Israel.
Because of just how much polarization and resentment and hatred there is.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the longest serving in Israel's history, once said he supported a two-state solution, but has since soured on the idea. And since Israel launched its war in Gaza in response to the October 7th Hamas terror attacks, Netanyahu has explicitly opposed Palestinian statehood, saying it would.
Let's not forget to mention that the United States just admitted that the Israeli government was committing human rights violations in the West Bank long before October 7th happened. We could potentially say that October 7th is a result of the human rights abuses going on in the West Bank, as well as the human rights abuses going on in Gaza before October 7th.
Would leave Israel unsafe.
Let's bring in Josh Letterman here. There's so much diplomacy. There's so many politics. There's an election coming up here in the U.S. in just about 6 months, all as Secretary of State Tony Blinken is in the region. It's a lot at play.
That's right, Hallie. And the Biden administration is now pushing this new proposal that they hope could jumpstart the two-state solution. They're essentially dangling the possibility that Saudi Arabia, a huge Arab power, could actually recognize and make peace with Israel if there were a credible pathway to a two-state solution. That was really the...
There's like 5 or 6 nations that already recognize the Palestinian state as a state. Having Saudi Arabia would definitely help, but I find it funny that Biden supposedly is in favor of a two-state solution when the United States just vetoed Palestine being recognized as a state in the UN, and the Biden administration is funding and arming the Israeli government to commit their genocide against the Palestinian people in Gaza so that the Israeli government can complete their one-state solution plan.
Focus of Secretary Blinken's visit to Saudi Arabia this week. And that's also where the election politics come into play, because President Biden wants this done, obviously, before the election so he can use it to sort of take a victory lap and show a real accomplishment to voters ahead of the election. And the Saudis, frankly, are watching that election.
It honestly won't show the voters anything because Biden is trying to both sides this by pretending to be in favor of like a Palestinian state and in favor of helping the Palestinians with aid, while at the same time supplying the Israeli government with arms and money and defending the Israeli government no matter what they do.
Clock too, Hallie, because they don't know what's going to happen after November, and they don't know whether under President Trump, Senate Democrats would ratify anything that might come before them. And so there's a lot of pressure from